Behind that mild-mannered man they were interviewing hid one of the bloodiest serial killers in history.
People on the outside do not know what evil is.
Do you know what evil is?
Sure,
Are you evil?
somewhat.
Arthur Shawcross's name became known around the world during the late 1980s. A sort of modern Jack the Ripper had turned up in New York. Not so much because of his modus operandi upon committing his crimes, but because his focus was on sex workers.
Her body was found in a nearby riverbed. She'd been strangled to death.
12 women disappeared in total. They were later found lifeless in sparsely populated places. Arthur didn't arouse any suspicions in the detectives. This wasn't surprising, as he looked like an entirely normal guy, even though he hid a bloody beast inside.
There's always a bad man in me. You never can get rid of it. He's behind a door somewhere.
However, inside his head existed a justification for all the horrible crimes he'd committed. Beyond his thirst for the blood of innocent people, Shawcross viewed his crimes as a form of revenge for a surprising fact that he couldn't verify.
When I picked those women up, I thought I had AIDS. Because one of the women who stopped in the car told me one of the women I took out has HIV positive. I didn't know which one of them were, so I went back and picked up all the ones I dated in 2 streets in Rochester, and I started killing them.
The story of Arthur Shawcross and the murders he carried out is one of the crudest examples of serial criminals anywhere in the world. And there were even more secrets to be revealed, because the crimes he had committed in the 80s weren't the only ones he carried out during his life.
What did you do to young Karen Hill?
I ain't saying. I told you I wouldn't talk about that. I wasn't talking about anything that happened in Watertown.
The bloodthirsty criminal had been accused of the deaths of 2 children in the town of Watertown while he was living with his 3rd wife and worked in the public labor department. However, he didn't want to refer to the heinous sins of that time.
Why not?
Because I make that. I'm not talking about anybody in Watertown. You can either take it or leave it.
Él no va a relatar con la misma cualidad o emocionalidad o va a evitar relatar como el asesinato de niños, porque lo más probable que existe una identificación. Él ve a esos niños y sienta algo o emociones paradojales. Al mismo tiempo, en 2 momentos, él perciba que esos niños tienen algo que tienen que ver con él, pero al mismo tiempo son cosas.
Justifications for the crimes he had committed abounded, that he'd been abused by his mother when he was little, or that he'd seen horrible things while he was in the military in Vietnam.
He was an extremely bizarre and troubled child, very, very early on, so that there's a consistency to this history of abuse.
Shawcross died in jail at age 63 of heart failure. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for the murders of 12 women. He became one of the most feared serial killers of the late 1980s, as someone who generated pain and distress in more than a dozen families who had to live with the death of their loved ones, something Arthur could only imagine as his worst nightmare.
But what would you think of them as a father, as a grandfather?
I would be devastated.